Hey, what's up? Last time we were able to set up Axios, and now we are ready to make our requests, specifically making a request to sign up a user. So to get started, I want to first check on our iOS friends because it's been a while since we've been focusing on Android. And for the things we are doing, I believe we won't be getting a lot of issues on Android. So let's check how the iOS is doing. So if we did yarn iOS right now, it's probably going to fail. And yeah, so you see, we need to actually install some things. So here I'm going to do a yarn pod. Remember, we have a pod script set up. If you don't have that, make sure in your package JSON you got that. So you can run yarn pod and you shouldn't get any weird problems. So let it build the iOS and see what we get over there. So also we are going to be working mostly in here. So you see here it fails, it needs the pod to first finish. So it has already installed it, let it finish, and then we can run the yarn iOS again. Okay, so let's remove this other use effect. This was used for testing. Also, we are going to be importing this as Axios, just so it looks like Axios, although it's an enhanced one. Okay, so now let's run iOS again. So yarn iOS. Okay, so when it finishes, it launches properly here on iOS, and you can see we have the login screen. It's looking good, and the register screen is also looking good. If we click submit, our errors are there, and it's looking good actually. So let's continue now. Let's go ahead and pick out the states that the user is putting here. So we already had set up the set form, so we can do a console log for the form to check if we can get all the states. So let's console log the form. So I'm going to bring up the section where we can see the console logs. Now here, if we type something, you see the username goes there, the last name, the email should be. Okay, so things seem to be okay. So now we already have the data. Now we want to send this data to the backend. So if you come to our API, you notice that on the register endpoint, we need to send the first name as a snake case and also the last name. So that means we need a way to change what we have in the form, like change this. But before we go there, we don't want to submit when we have like a local error. So for us to do that, I'm going to come down here in the on submit. Okay, so to check if there are any values that are empty, right here we can have a check. So we can do something like if, then we want object with a capital R, then we want to do dot values. So we want to check all the values in the object form. Then we want to check for every. So that returns us an array. So when we do every, it's going to be returning us a true or false depending on if it matches with the condition. So every gives us each item and the index that it's at. So we can now check if the item, then we're going to be removing the spaces. So we're going to be the white spaces by trimming it. Then we want to check if its length is greater than 0. Okay. So if that's the case, then we also want to make sure that the values that are in there are, how many are they? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because initially it's going to be empty, but we want to check that they are there and none of them is empty. So here we can check if this length is 5. So we can quickly do that. Dot length equals 5. Then also add another check in there. Then, so if these are there, then that means that the user would have submitted the form properly, and we can go ahead and basically submit it. So here we can do a console log. So actually this want to be like robust enough. We also want to make sure there are no errors. Okay. So to make sure there are no errors, we want to have an every for the errors too. So let's also have an and in there. So this is going to be checking the errors. So every error, it should be null. So that means we need to be checking for if it's not a truthy value. Okay. So yeah, so now if we come here, let's do a console log for when everything is good. So CLO, we put 111 in here. Then let me remove the form logs because there are going to be many actually. Let me comment this, also come over here and comment this. Okay. Reboot it a bit so we can start out on a fresh look. So if we go here and try to submit, you see that we get the errors and the submit doesn't work. We don't have the 1 there. So if we put this, if we try to submit, you see it doesn't work. If we meet this, you see it meets, we submit, now it works. So at this point we can go ahead and submit to the server, which we are going to do here. So for us, we are going to have a pattern that's going to use we are going to be using the flags pattern. Now our context falls directly into that. So in actions, we are going to create a folder called auth. Now in there, we are going to have a register.js. Okay, so here we're going to have a function. So export default function. Then this is going to be using Axios to make a request. So it's going to be doing Axios. Let me get Axios interceptor. Then we want to do a post request because we are going to be logging in. Now, whenever we call this, we're going to be passing it the data. So the data that we're going to be passing basically will be the form. So we can go ahead and destructure the email, the password, the username, and also the email, the password, the username, then the first name. So remember, the first name is like this, but we want to send it as like this, as snake case like we saw. Similarly, for the last name, we also need to pick it and also give it an alias to use snake case as the server expects that. So once we get this, so we need to send this object to the endpoint. So first off, we need to pass the endpoint. So that's going to be /auth/register. And since our API has a slash, we don't need to put a slash there. Then the next thing, we can pass this. It's going to be first name, last name, email. Let me bring them here. Okay, so now we send our data. Should be last name. This should be an alias, not a comma. Okay, so like this. Now we need to do a .10, of course, .10. Then we get the response. Then we can do something with it. Then we need to catch our errors by doing .catch. So we can do error, something like that. Now, whenever we are doing this, we need a way to maintain the loading state inside the component. So what we will do is here, when we call, actually let's call this function and give it the data. So here we can say register. Okay. Then let's make sure it's being imported from actions. Then we want to give it the data, which would be in the form, because we are sure everything is already there since we are already validating here. So in there, we need a way to be able to change the state in our context. So we can only change that state using the dispatch function that we get from our use reducer. So if we came here, we need to get access to our context. So we can do const. We need the auth dispatch. So let's do it. Let's get it. Should be auth dispatch. So we created this as the value in our global provider. You guys already know that. If you don't, then you might need to check out some other videos we started with. So do use context, and then use context takes in what it wants, which should be the global context. Make sure it's being imported. Okay, so now this comes from auth. You see we have the function. Now we need to pass this. So I'm gonna come right here where we called register the action, then pass the auth dispatch. Now here we can expect it. So we can expect it here as dispatch. Now we can use it to dispatch some actions to the reducer. Now for us to dispatch actions, we need two things. One is going to be the type of the action and also the payload that we want the reducer to use to update our global state. So I'm going to go to our constants. So in constants, so I'm going to go to the constants quickly here. So here I'm going to create another file called action types. So I'm going to have an index.js in here. So now we can have, let's say, something like register loading. So export const. This can be any string. So we put them in here just because we want to be consistent. So also we can have like register success and also register fail. So let's change this fail. Also make sure it's the one we are using here. So now that we have those, we can dispatch them here. So before we even make a request, we can dispatch that we are now loading. So we can dispatch type, and then so we can dispatch a type. So the type is going to be register loading. So whenever we get a response, now we can dispatch a success or a failure depending on what we have. So if it's successful, then we want to dispatch success, register success. Then now we can pass the payload down. So the payload, we'll be getting it from the server. That's gonna be something like the user. So we get that from res.data. Okay. So if you have an error, we also want to dispatch an error so we can show it on a screen, or if you have many, show them on screens. So if you have errors, so we can do something like if error.response, then we want to send error.response.data. Else we can send an object that has something like error, something went wrong. So the errors part will run only when we don't have the error response, meaning the request failed locally and it didn't connect to the backend. So that's why you see me put the error here. Once we have this, we need to have a reducer that actually listens to this. So we are going to go to our reducers. So in reducers, we have the auth reducer. Now here we can say, okay, if we have the loading state, let's say we have just the loading here, we want to update our state quite a bit. So right now I'm going to do a console log here to see what our state looks like, so I can know how we need to update it. So if we came here and did a submit, let me first fill in data since the validations won't let me. Submit. You see we have data. Yeah, we have data, we have is logged in, we have all this other stuff. So what we want to do, since this is specifically the auth state, we can just return data. So basically we can return the state that is there and only change the loading state. So we can say maybe we are loading now. Okay. So also I'm going to be working on the other types. So let's check if we have, let's say, error. If you have like loading, register success, if you have like register success. So if you have register success, we can turn loading to false and also change the value of data to the one that we send in from the server. So data can be here. We already have the payload being dispatched, being destructured. So you can set the data to the payload. Let's make sure we have that import. So let's also work with the error. So this is gonna be fail. So when it fails, we are going to be sending the error, of course, from this side, either from the server or our own. We can do that by changing error. Is it errors? Okay, we'll find out. If it's error, so error will still be the payload. Okay, so once I come here and click submit, so if we click submit there, you see that now we can submit. So let's go ahead and use our our loading state to show that the button is loading and also disable it when we are loading. So I'm going to go to our screen. So in the screen register, now we can select other things. So here, let's have the auth state. Let's console log it. So notice that we have an error. You see, we got something went wrong. You see, there was a time when loading changed to true and then it changed back to false. So we can now come here and pick those values too. So we can destructure error, loading, and also data maybe if we need to. So let's send these ones. Can't find value auth state. That's okay. We know what it is. So now we have these. We can send them down to the component and use them maybe to update the UI. Use them to update the UI. So now we can do error equals error, then we need to pass loading too. So loading equals loading. So if we went to our component, we can pick loading and error. So loading and also error. So here on the button, on our custom button, we can pass the loading prop. So we can say loading equals loading. Okay. So if we came back here and tried to submit, you see that it loads and then it basically stops. So what we want now is to disable the button when we are loading. So we can pass our disabled prop when we are loading, so a user doesn't have to click it again and again and make requests that are not necessary. So if we click it again, you see it gets disabled. And yeah, so let's take a look at the errors. So maybe it's an error we can catch. And by the way, you can do a console log anywhere inside JSX. So if you do error, it's a network error. So it's not able to connect to the backend. I'm guessing it's because I don't have an active internet connection. Let me verify that it's not. So let's go here. It's working. Let's go to YouTube. So you notice that I can't go to YouTube. That's because my connection has run out. I need to load data on my phone, and then I can come back and be able to continue this. So let me pause a bit and I'll come back and we finish this bad boy. So anyways, guys, if we have an error like this, of course we want to show it. Now the way we can show it is we can check if it is there, and then we show it on the screen. So that should be easy to do. So since it's not an error that is tied to any input, we can add it anywhere. So we can add it anywhere. So we can come, let's say like here, inside here, we say if we have error dot error. So if we have error dot error, then we want to show it. So we can have something really simple. Let's have a text that shows it. Okay, so you see something, should be something went wrong, but we didn't actually even finish writing it. So it should be something went wrong, try again. So if we came here and submitted, put the password, submitted, see it is there. Now in the there will be a video where we'll be working on message components so that we make a one that looks really good and not just this. So just a second, let me go ahead and recharge, and then I will be able to come back and we finish this. Okay, so moving on. Now if we went ahead and clicked submit, so let's wait and see what's happening over there. So after you see it's done, and now it sends us our errors. So you see we have some errors from the server. That's because it's not seeing the username. It's also validating these other inputs. So we also need to add some other hints to our inputs. So we are going to go to our sign up component, and here instead of having errors to be errors.username, we are also going to be specifying error. So you remember error is initially going to be empty. So now we can say if we have error.username, when we have these errors, they are going to come, the values will come as an array. So we want to be showing one by one, of course. So we're going to do something like this, but this might be undefined. So you want to do this. So let me save it, and you will see that the error is added there. So we're going to do the same thing for the other inputs, because these errors were local. Now these are going to be coming from the backend. So where we have error, we should do that. Then this should be first name, like this. Save, and you will see that the error is there. Let's do the same thing for the last name, and you will see that the error is there. So don't worry, we need to of course fix this. We are going to. So let's also have one for the email. Save it, and you see that the one for the email is there. Let's check if we have one for the password. Hopefully not. This should be password. Save it. And this one we don't have it, but if it was, it would also show. So let's check what we are doing wrong. So it looks like we are not getting the username, and that's because the username, we also have it differently. We have it as username. So in the form we have it as username. So we want to also rename it like that. Now let's try again. If we came here and added some names, let's do this. Submit. See, now the errors are cleared out, and we have only the one for the email. So for the email, if we went ahead and put a correct one, let's say we put at gmail.com. So let me use actually the one that's taken. So if we do this, then we can try to submit. You see it's already in use. So the errors are being handled properly if we use the name that's taken. So I believe hello is taken. If we tried this, you see that we show it there. So things are looking good. Let's change this one to another one, gmail.org. Shouldn't exist. Then the name, let's just CRYCE, Christ, like that. Then let's try to submit. So when everything is good, oh, this is also already taken. Christ truly 5555. Let's try again. Email is taken. Really? Let's try again. Jeez, really? You serious? Okay, so let me use a random user here. Try to submit. Don't get it. Oh, so there's a point where we need to really redirect on success, because you see here when we get data, that means that the user has actually been created. So at that point in time, we want to redirect. Okay, so let's first do that. We are going to go to our screen. So the screen will be the register screen, of course. So here we'll have a use effect that checks if data is not null. So we can do if data, then we want to navigate. So we will be navigating to login. Okay, like this. But this has to run only once when the data is there. So we're going to use we are going to use use effect, which is a hook that we can tap into, and it listens to all component changes. So it's going to be listening to the changes in the data variable. Now when it's there, then it's going to be navigating away. Let's make sure importing navigate. So we can get navigate from use navigation. So here we can have something like const navigate equals the use navigation hook. All right, so now let's make sure use effect is imported. I don't get it. Oh, I need to remove this one away from here. Sorry. Let's also leave some space here. Save it, and now you see that when data is there, it moves away. Okay, so with use effect, it's going to be looking for changes in these dependencies. These are called technically called dependencies, and it's going to run the code in here. So now you will see that it goes away, it moves to the login page. So at this point, we want to maybe tell the user that welcome. So at this point, we want to tell the user something like welcome, your account has been created, and you can log in, that kind of thing. So let's test it out one more time and make sure that it's working. So you'll notice that I can't actually go there because this is always true. So what we want to do is use a focus effect so that when we move out from this screen, we immediately clear out this data so that the user doesn't have to be not able to go back to the screen, because this will always be true. Okay, so to do that, we are going to come here and import use focus effect. So copy it out, then you want to import it from wherever. Let's make sure it's here. Use effect. We actually need to change these imports quite a bit. So to use it, you want to use it inside use callback because you want it to be memorized. So if we come here, we can have another use effect. Now this can be any, but ours is only going to be checking if we have data. So here we can check if we have data. So if we have data, then we can clear out that data from the global state. So I'm going to have some action called clear data, clear auth state. Then of course it's going to take in the dispatch because we want to change some state in the global state. So the dispatch will be the auth dispatch, of course. Let's have it. Now let's also import this. So I'm going to be putting it inside this file, inside where we have this. So we can import it like this. It's not going to be a default export. So I'm going to come to the actions, which are here, and also export const. This, obviously it brings in the dispatch. Then we are going to be dispatching clear auth state. So dispatch type clear auth state. How did it know? So now that we do that, we also need to make sure we can import it. So this is going to be a function, of course. So let's make sure we can import it from here. Let's go there and create it. So export const, it can be anything. Now that we have it, we need to go ahead and handle it inside our reducers. So here we can check if we have clear auth state. So case clear auth state, then we want to make data null. So we can do that by saying say data null. Okay, so cool. Now if we come here, let's reiterate on what exactly is happening. The import is not working yet. Let's come over here. We are importing its clear auth state. Oh, what's happening here? Jeez. So let's fix our import clear auth state. Okay, like this. So that imports it. Now if we came here, you see that first it didn't work. So also, damn. So whenever we leave this screen and we had data, we want to be clearing out like all errors. So also we can have if data or error. Let's say a user was filling in the form and then they didn't complete. So what we want to do is be able to also reset those errors from the screen. We don't want the user to always find them there. So inside here, of course, when we do this, you notice that this function, we dispatch this type of clear state, and in the reducers, if you came back here, what we do is we reset the data and also let's reset the errors to null. Okay, so now if we come to this, we are having an error because this was reset to null, but what we want to do is make sure we don't do .error directory inside our component. So we will go to our sign up, and where we have .error, it should be on top here. So if you have error.error, we don't need to do it like this. So now that should do. So if we came back here in the register, try to submit, we get our errors. Now let me put a valid user. Then when we click submit, you see it's going to go ahead and submit, and when it's done, it's going to come over here. So now we should be able to go back to the screen by clicking register, and now you see that we can go there. Okay, so that's going to do it for now. If there are any hiccups, we are going to be fixing them in the next video. So thanks guys for watching. In the next one, I'm going to come and we start to log in a user, and hopefully we'll work on the messaging component to show like those maybe invalid credentials. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Bye.